advertising is an industry. It's so big. There's more nuance to it that don't get talked about. People mention enthusiasm a lot, right? But then also think outside of the box when it's come to resources. Being a Gen Z means you get access to a lot more resources than the previous generations. You got podcasts, you got TikTok. So really immerse yourself in like the kind of industry or the job that you want to do. I only got stressed about the sponsorship when they announced that, they were going to change the threshold. I interviewed for this current job. After the first round, they really liked me, and that's where I brought up. I said, by the way, I need a sponsorship. Initially, they actually said no.
Moving abroad and building your life away from all your friends and families and everything familiar to you is a nuanced journey that we don't talk about enough, and we shouldn't have to do it alone. Welcome back to London, a video podcast series about finding your way and building your life abroad. I'm your host, Ellen. Our guest today, Như, came to the UK for A-level schools. She had a first-class degree in media studies. For most of her time on the graduate visa, she worked at an advertising agency as an account executive. Then she moved to another big agency as an account manager, and this is where she got her skilled worker visa sponsorship. Before coming to the UK, she already had experience working in Vietnam as a marketing assistant. So in today's episode, I'm excited to learn more about marketing and advising industry in both Vietnam and the UK from Nyu's perspectives, and especially how she navigated her career and gained sponsorship in such a competitive job market. Welcome to the show, Như. How are you today?
It's been good. I mean, it's a Saturday. I actually had a day off yesterday, so I'm feeling very refreshed and excited for this podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And so obviously we want to understand your journey. Can you walk us and the audience through your timeline from when you first came to the UK till now?
So I came to the UK when I was 16 to do my A-levels in the very small British town in southeast England, and then I went to uni in a city called Norwich, and then after uni I moved down to London to work, and I've been here since then. Yeah. So it's been almost 8 years in total, and it's been weird to think that it's been 8 years. It's long, but it's not that long compared to you.
You make me sound old now. But I know what you mean. I feel like it is, how long the journey is, and you kind of somewhere on there, and compared to the time you in Vietnam as well, it is not like the whole of that, but it is long. Like 8 years is a long time.
It's like 1/3 of my life now.
Yeah, it's still a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really strange.
Yeah. So in terms of your study and your career, how can you share more about the work experience that you have had and then the jobs that you have had so far? Like, what is that journey? It's like, I suppose that you must have done something from university.
I think when I walk you through my journey, it sounded a bit straightforward, but it actually wasn't like that. It's actually not linear, as I usually say, because I'm the typical Gen Z that actually had to go through uni during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes people forget that kind of fact.
Yeah.
So I actually took a gap year.
Oh, wow.
During my university days, and that's where I mentioned the marketing assistant experience, because when I went back to Vietnam for the gap year, I was like, now that I'm not at uni, I need to do something. I wanted to help my job application, and somehow I found that job at an AI tech company, so that was quite fun. And then, so actually, before I finished uni, I always thought to myself that I wanted to work at a startup.
Yeah. And
then going from that startup experience, when I came back to the UK, I'm like, I've got experience in the startup, but in Vietnam, now I need an experience in a British startup or like anywhere else. So I applied to an internship in a startup in London. And then that was the point where I was like, actually, I don't like being in a startup anymore. I think because even for a startup, there's a lot of stages. And then I think I just didn't enjoy the fact that I had to do a lot of things. So, out of uni, my first approach when it's come to job is I now want to work for a big company. And then because I did a media studies degree, as I said, I always know advertising as a career option. Like,
Yeah.
it's not the most immediate one because media is more about, I think the one that I did was more about like production side of things, the more creative side of things. Advertising has a lot of nuance to it. But then I've always heard about these company, and so I applied to one, and that's how I landed my first media job out of uni, and then got this one, and still stay in the industry till now.
Yeah, wow. I think definitely people don't talk about enough how studying during COVID abroad and then going back to Vietnam, I'm sure there was a lot of uncertainty, right? And then you feel like the investment into this education and you didn't have that experience on campus. What was it like during that time and how did you approach about getting that work experience in Vietnam?
So yeah, I remember the first case of COVID in the UK.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
how crazy that is. I feel like so when the first case of COVID happened in the UK, my mum already phoned me saying, you need to go home, you can't stay here by yourself. And I'm like, oh, it's fine, you know, they got pretty good healthcare system here, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
So I was a bit stubborn, I didn't want to go home at first, and then eventually I got on a plane, I got home. And so that was March 2020. And then I finished the rest of my second year online, and I didn't quite like it. And I think move it into my third year, which is the year I had to do a 12,000 words dissertation.
Oh, yeah, wow.
I didn't want to do it online. There's no point. I actually like my course. I really love writing essays.
Oh, nice.
And I love putting effort in all the work that I do. And I feel like I just don't want to do uni for the sake of doing uni. And especially as international student, we pay a lot of money for these degrees as well.
The experience as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
I said, if I do it online, I could do it on Coursera or something, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And like the fraction of the price of that.
Yeah, so that's why I said to my family, I said, I think doing a gap year would be a good decision. But yeah, as you say, there's a lot of uncertainty. I feel like a lot of my friends, they decided to continue with uni. So one of my concerns about going back to uni after the gap year was I don't know anyone anymore. But yeah, so during that year, I thought to myself, now that I'm not studying, what should I do? How do I make the most out of this? So I thought I was interested in marketing back then, and how I found that job was actually from a Facebook group. So there is this Facebook group for expats living
wow.
in Ho Chi Minh City.
Oh, nice.
And I posted something. I said, oh, I'm doing this gap year. I wanted some more work experience. And this lady, she approached me. She said that, oh, I'm building an AI dating app startup.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's how I got my first marketing role.
Yeah.
That was my experience, navigating around COVID time and then coming back to the UK.
Yeah, I like how you obviously have put thought into that and just did not just go with the flow and then stay in the UK, but you actually make the decision to go to back to Vietnam during that time, and then even proactively got some work experience in Vietnam as well.
Yeah.
So at that time, what was in your head about your plan with the UK? Because I know that a lot of people actually, maybe they even decide to go back, and because they're in Vietnam, they get comfortable. I don't know, I just kind of guessing. So what was kind of your mental state at that time? Did you think that I'm going to go back to UK and then get a sponsored job and I want to stay in UK for a long time? What was it like for you?
I always said that this period, the period where I have a sponsored job and I actually feel like an adult, being a bit more comfortable in my career, is such a weird period because I've actually never thought I would be in the UK for this long. Because I got a sister and she did a similar route. So she went to the UK for A-levels.
Oh, nice, yeah.
And uni and master. But then she came back after her graduation.
Yeah.
So I feel like this part where I started working was the pages that I kind of wrote for myself, and I had to do it all by myself. So yeah, about coming back to the UK, I think my first approach was just I wanted to finish whatever I started, and that was university first. And then the early mentality that I think I had over the years was I wanted to push myself, and also I put myself in the position to think that if tomorrow, for whatever reason, if I can't be in the UK anymore, because there's a lot of uncertainty as an expat, would I regret not doing anything? And I think, out of uni, I said, oh, actually, I want to give working in the UK a try. So I used that graduate visa. And now, again, I said, I want to progress my career in media in the UK. And I got the sponsored job. So I think these days I start thinking that, if I had to move somewhere else in the world tomorrow, I wouldn't have any regret anymore. And if I do, it would be the reason for me to come back to the UK.
Then you feel like it was not really like planned, like in the beginning, I'm like going to get a degree, stay here to get a job. I'm also like you driven by that, wanting to have more experiences as you go along, right? Yeah, and making the next steps. Yeah. In terms of the job search process, can you share a bit more about the first job that you got? How did you find that job? Where did you go to even find the job posting? And then what was the interview process like to get that?
So for the first job, I think I just went to the company website. I always say I found that more sufficient than, like, sometimes you could find a job posting on LinkedIn, but I would always encourage people to apply directly on the company website rather than doing easy apply, because easy apply means it will be easily being missed as well. So that was my approach. I said, I think I did write a list of all the big media companies that I wanted to work for, and that was my starting point. So I just applied to any roles that I think I could do, and but yeah, that's how I managed to find the job that I first got. And in terms of the interview process, there was 2 rounds, so very standard for the media industry. And then, so first round was with the immediate manager, and then the second round was with the head of the department. But yeah, it was pretty straightforward. I know that a lot of roles in media, you will have to go through all the tests and all of that.
Case studies,
I have a lot of questions with that, but unfortunately, I've never have to go through the process. I think it's also what is being unsaid a lot is because there's so many roles in media. So the role that I did was fairly new, I think, and I think they were in the mentality that they wanted to train someone from scratch, and I knew that I was ready to be trained from scratch. So there's not much to prove in terms of testing. But yeah, that was my first job searching experience.
You're quite straightforward. But at that time, were you on a student visa when you're applying for that job?
Yes.
How did you approach that conversation with them when they asked, like, do you have the right to work in the UK? Because a lot of people ask me about this, and they say that they might get dinged immediately if they say that they're on student visa and they don't have a work permit or something like that. So yeah, how did you go about that at that time in your experience?
I think I always say this. I feel like being away from home since a young age and having to navigate like visa and all of that stuff, I kind of have to be my own lawyer.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to get that job straight out of uni, like a week out of my graduation, and I was still using my student visa back then. And I remember I had to go on the government office website. I have to send that link to HR saying that you can work on a student visa. This is the proof, That's what I'm saying. I think a lot of the time, you would assume that people working in resources, like human resources, would know the stuff. But at the same time, the market is so competitive. If they know that you require a bit more of their time, they might pass your application even though they might like you for the first stage. So I think my advice would be just fight for it with evidence. And the evidence is there. Like there's a lot of appendix on what you can do with a student visa, any sort of visa. So again, be your own lawyer and bring the evidence.
Yeah. When did they ask about it? Was it through an email or was it like application form? So I think a lot of people did not know when to communicate that and how to answer that on an application form. You have any tips on that?
I think it depends, but I feel like for me, when it's come to any job up until now, a lot of the time I think to myself, okay, if we put aside the visa issue, how do I showcase myself the best? I focus on that part first. I think a lot of the time, if they call you back, it means that they somewhat like your application, they like your CV. So if they want to set up an interview with you or like go through your experience, all of that, that's already a win. Most of the time, the applications don't get seen. So I think just follow through the process first and then bring it up at some point where you feel like they already like you. I think that is a good time to bring up the visa thing.
Yeah. Well, you say if they ask straight away, like you say, you should send them the evidence that you have the rights to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always follow up, as I say, if you think that they think it's a concern for them, then just ensure them that it's not a concern. It shouldn't be a concern. Again, it should be whether if you're good enough for the job.
Yeah, yeah. And you stay at that job for more than a year, for quite a long time.
Yeah.
So I could imagine that moving towards the end of your graduate visa. So tell me more about that stage. How did you approach finding a new job, and how did you find these jobs, and how did you approach that sponsorship conversation with the next job?
For some reason, I think I'm quite a planner. So I think it's the kind of mentality that might hurt me sometimes, but also works in my advantage sometimes, is I always think about what's next. So I think I said for my first job, the reason why I got it so early on out after uni was because I apply early. When I was writing my dissertation, I got a bit bored, so I went on a job. I went to the company's website to apply for those jobs, and that was a job that I got. So when it's come to this sponsored job, I think my first approach was that I didn't get the progressions that I wanted in my first job, and I brought it up. I brought the topic up like again and again, and still didn't get what I want. So I think now it's time for me to progress to another role. But then at the same time, I still got quite a lot of time on my graduate visa, so I wasn't too stressed about getting the sponsorship. I only got stressed about the sponsorship when they announced that they were going to change the threshold.
Yep.
So I brought it up to my manager of my first job. So there was a lot of issues to navigate around here. So I need the progression, I need the sponsorship. And then, from there, I think for the role, so I said for the next role, I need both of them. I need the progression and I need the sponsorship. And again, I interviewed for this current job. And after the first round, they really liked me, and that's where I brought up. I said, "Oh, by the way, I need a sponsorship."
After the first round, that they show that they like you.
Yeah. And then initially, they actually said no.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I move on with my life. I wasn't too stressed about it. But then they came back to me. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's hope. Again, keep fighting for it. You won't know what will happen. So they actually called me back like 1 or 2 weeks later. They said, well, I'm going to raise a business case for you if you are sure that you will get this job, like you will accept this offer. And I said, yes, of course. And that's how I got the sponsorship for my current role.
Yeah, but wait, is that after the interview process is over, or just only after the first round?
After the first round. So
wow.
Funnily, I still have to go through the second round. They must that's what I've thought to myself. They must really like me after the first round.
Yeah, wow, that's really flattering. Like you feel valued, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a big hurdle for them. I mean, I'm sure they're a big company, so they already sponsor other people, I'm sure. Yeah. But it's still like they have to raise a business case.
Yeah, I think account manager is still quite junior within the structure of an agency. But I think this might be in one of your other questions, but I think what I bring to the table is actually my specialty in terms of which part of advertising I'm specializing. So I've always for my first role, I've always worked in connected TV. So it's this very niche specific branch of TV advertising, and that's how I use that kind of knowledge to my current role. So if you ask me anything about TV advertising, for some reason I know quite a lot when it's come to that kind of advertising.
Yeah, become an edge that you have to offer the value.
Yeah.
But I really like the fact that you only approach that conversation after the first interview, where you know that you have made an impression of them, instead of straight out? Because imagine if you have said that straight out the gate, then they say no, they don't know you yet, so, and then they just walk away and that's it.
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot. I actually asked around, like, when should I bring out this topic? But again, I think the mentality was I was given the platform to showcase what I've learned so far in my career. I shouldn't just say, oh, here's my visa issues, and then they would say no immediately without even knowing who I am. So I just went with the process first and then see how it goes. At least I get to showcase what I know.
Let's talk a bit more about the industry, because like you said, you're a Gen Z coming here, but I'm millennial, and back in my days, like so many people applying for banking, consulting, tech, IT, computer sciences, and engineering, like all the popular, more like STEM, more technical. And then nowadays, I see more and more people coming here studying media, marketing, and they're very interested in finding jobs here and understanding the job market here. Yeah. But I think it can still be quite hard to find information, and a lot of it through conversations with people. And it's not the most friendly to international students as well, because obviously you have the language barriers and culture barriers as well. So can you share more about the industry based on your experiences, and what do you think make you stand out and get these jobs, or how to help people to stand out more?
I think it's so interesting that you mention it as an industry. I think that was one of the points that I wanted to include today. I think I tried to remind myself not to forget about it, because a lot of the time advertising is an industry, like banking, as in we offer services to our clients. So I think a lot of marketing students, as you said, they come to me asking for advice. They say, oh, I want to work for an ad agency. And I said, okay, which part? And they give me very limited options. It could be media planners or some roles that they might have heard about. But I think when it's come to the media or advertising industry, it's so big. There's more nuance to it that don't get talked about. So I think one of the good ways to approach this whole job process is actually think about it as an industry, because as an industry, it means that there's so much more roles. We have our own data team. You could be working in advertising as a lawyer or in finance, because we, as an industry, we have other kind of services, right? You can be in data as well. And then there's a lot of, I think that what I've learned in the industry is there's a lot of jargons, and there's a lot of jobs that you haven't even heard about. I mean, most people don't know what I do. Like even within our agency, most people don't know what I do because it's so niche. But I think my advice for people that want to get into the industry is to do your research in terms of get very, very specific, get very niche, because one part of the industry I found quite interesting is called ad tech, so advertising tech. So I think a lot of the time when people think about advertising, they only see the surface. They only think about the
billboards.
Yeah, exactly. They only see the part where you make the ad, but that is actually reality is that's actually very small of the marketing budget. It's actually the process behind it, how to get it to the audience. That's the process that involves a lot of money. And have you even when I have this kind of conversation with people, they're like, oh yeah, we never really thought about this, right? How does it appear on your YouTube? It costs money. How does it appear at OOH, the billboards that you say? That's a lot of money. And that's why I said my first role in media, I was a part of the investment team. Because we invest in media, and the media spends with a lot of vendors. Again, I mentioned a lot of keywords here where people outside the industry probably haven't heard about. But this is the chance where there's so many sides of advertising where you can tap in, and a lot of the time, I think it's good to. I think what you can stand out is to show your enthusiasm for the whole industry, rather than thinking that working in it is. Well, rather than thinking about it as just a job that you want to do, I guess. Because, I got some people say, oh, I want to become a media planner. But when I asked, do you know do you know what we do, like what these companies do? They don't know. They don't actually know. So I said, when So I said one funny story when it's come to my first job is the questions, why do you want to work for us? That questions always pop up, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know, maybe because I was very young or maybe because I'm the typical Gen Z. I said, I want to work for you because you're you. You know, I said the company name.
Yeah.
I said, because when I was doing my degree in media studies, I've always heard about you. So I've thought that out of uni, I'm going to apply to you. So I think that kind of answer kind of demonstrate my enthusiasm for the industry, knowing that they're a big name in the industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people who want to get into the industry could leverage a little bit more.
Did you say that it would help, especially when it was more beginning of your career? Because, like you say, it does get quite technical, quite niche. So people who maybe straight out of school doesn't really know all the jargon yet. So that enthusiasm and research is very important to make an impression.
And also, again, you know, people mention enthusiasm a lot, right? But then, you know, it's also very competitive. How do you demonstrate it? I think also think outside of the box when it's come to resources. As I say, being a Gen Z means that you get access to a lot more resources than the previous generations. You got podcasts, you got TikTok, you got all sort of stuff. So really immerse yourself in like the kind of industry or the job that you want to do. I think pick someone's mind is my favorite English phrase, where, you know, you get so many ways to pick someone's mind. You can listen to a CEO perspective on a podcast. And another way is actually, as an industry, we really try to bring in more diversity. And what I've seen at two big media companies is they partner up with a lot of organizations. I think that part get unsaid a lot. They partner up with a lot of external organization, and they do events, they do Insights Day, they do some sort of program, 3-month summer programs. And that's how you demonstrate your enthusiasm. First stage is probably getting more involved within the industry one way or another.
So enthusiasm with evidence.
Yeah. Be your lawyer, make a case.
yeah, exactly. Not just saying that, oh, I want this, but actually show how I want it.
Yeah, back it up.
Yeah. No, it's a very good point. And do you have any advice for people to kind of learn, be more, like you say, have to get very specific? Do you have any tips for getting, I don't know, more of that information from maybe someone from industry that you have a mentor? Is there any specific tips that you have?
I think for me, I was very lucky that, you know, I was picked based on my enthusiasm for the industry and through my degree. I think, you know, my degree worth a mention, because not a lot of people in media has a media degree actually. So I think I got lucky because that a lot of the time people see that I have a media studies degree and they think that I am suited for the industry.
You're not lucky. You studied it. You earned it.
At the same time, I think what really worked for me as well throughout my career is my eager to learn. So not after the job. I think I learned a lot about the industry after I got a job. So I would say yes to anything. My manager would ask me, "No, you want to go to this event? You want to go to this conference?" I would always say yes, and that's how I found myself in a lot of situations where I'm the only junior person in a room. But then at the same time, that was how I learned more about the industry as a whole. Again, I think meeting people and asking questions and be curious about a job is the good first step. And also, you know, use the power of the community as well. There's actually a lot of Vietnamese working in advertising. They're just very low-key. You would manage to find them if you ask around. Again, I think the power of community is really important. You know, from this podcast, you can reach out to me, but then I could recommend you to some more people. Recently, someone said to me saying that, oh, I was at this networking event and they said they wanted to connect with you, and I was like, what have I done? Like, how did you even hear about me? But I think that's how you do it. I think people in this industry, particularly because we work with so many people, we are very, very friendly. So no one would say no to you if you want to pick a bit of their mind. So that's how you get more insights into the jobs that aren't that weren't really here, like maybe 2 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. And glad to hear that your degree helped you get the job. You know, a lot of people don't study what end up getting the job. Like I did psychology and nothing to do with what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's good that you actually studied and you found that helpful in applying for jobs. Okay, before we moving on, now it's the bonding section segment of this podcast where we will be trying food together to our viewers and to people who are new to this podcast. Eating is a way of Vietnamese people bond, basically. So I was just saying that our parents might never say I love you, but they will feed us, and that is how they show love.
Again, my parents do say they love me because maybe it's a younger generation kind of thing. But I get what you mean.
Yeah, for millennials, they don't say I love you. But
but sometimes I'm like, I don't. That's another thing where I'm like, my family don't really suit the stereotype. They're very, very these days.
Yeah, wow. Then, but you agree that bonding
I love food. I love food. I do.
So I want to show, but it's good to clarify that it's not always the case that parents do say I love you nowadays, and especially even Asian parents.
Yeah.
We are preparing chè, and you basically say CHE, but we're tonation. So can you describe what we're doing?
We're just mixing in the ice with the dessert. So it's got like some sort of toppings in it, and they're all very chewy, I guess. But just mixing it up.
We actually have different type of chè as well, but it's quite similar, right? Because
they're all different toppings, but essentially it's supposed to be very sweet.
Yeah, it is a sweet dessert, and it is definitely my favorite as well.
Really?
So when I drink bubble tea, I tend to just eat the jelly and not drink the water. And I realized that, wow, actually, I just want this.
The thing about this is it's just normally just the toppings and coconut milk.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, with bubble tea, you have the milk and the tea.
The milk. There's more milk, liquid than things to chew.
Yeah.
But here you have more things to chew than liquid. Oh, God.
Can I dig in? That's good.
It's nice.
It does remind me of home.
Did you eat this a lot in Vietnam?
But one that is related to chè is when I started learning how to swim.
Oh.
And I didn't like learning how to swim. I didn't like the lessons. But then my mum would always bring me to chè afterwards.
Manipulation.
So that's what I'm saying. Like I just remember eating a lot of chè in that period when I learned how to swim.
See, that's what we do, right? Like with the food, it's a reward. But this is very nice.
This is nice, yeah.
I don't know if non-Vietnamese people know about this dessert that much.
No, yeah, that's the thing as well. That's why I'm like, this is a very essential Vietnamese dessert. And I think I'm such a massive fan of food. I love talking about food and also the origin of food. I think my only problems when people ask me like, what's your favorite Vietnamese food is you probably wouldn't know about it. Most of the stuff that we have here in London, like obviously there's a lot of Vietnamese restaurants, but I think they kind of mix the kind of cuisines in their menu, so they can have something very northern like pho with something like banh mi, you know. But then chè is very southern, central Vietnam. So I would say that's probably the reason why it's not as popular. But yeah, so when it's come to my favorite Vietnamese food, I like something more southern because it's hotter there.
Yeah.
So this is perfect, right? I also like bánh tráng, if you know what it is.
Yeah.
So it's a very Saigon thing where we love anything bánh tráng related, rice paper related. We have this snacks called mixed rice paper, bánh tráng trộn. But yeah, those are my favorite food. Maybe I have a palate over 5 years though. I just don't like proper pho, but I like my snacks.
Like the snacks. But I think it might be something, I don't know it's right. It's a complete made up theory because we left Vietnam quite young and we ate these things. I mean, for me at least, like Chinese food. I left also like you very young in my teens, and these things like in my childhood. So it's always feel like It's so nice when you have it. Yeah. It's not like proper meal, but you like these things.
Yeah, maybe that's a good theory.
Like you
Yeah.
stuck there a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah. Wow, this is getting really deep.
You also have work experiences in Vietnam. Like you mentioned, you went back to Vietnam for the gap year and you had work experience in Vietnam there. How was it compared to working in the UK?
You know what? This actually ties it up really perfectly with what we've done so far. So I think one thing that I really miss when I first started out in the UK is people don't bond over food. As in, like they do bond over food, like snacks and donuts. But when I was working in Vietnam around 2 or 3 p.m. because food delivery service there is really popular. You know, it's like Deliveroo but more affordable. So around 3 p.m. when we have um, that sort of fatigue, everyone just come together to order food together, like bubble tea or tea or bánh tráng trộn, that sort of stuff. So we don't have that kind of culture here in the UK, and I think that's what I kind of miss as well, being such a big fan of these sort of snacks. But also another difference is probably the way we interact. So I think here people have really clear boundaries when it's come to people that you work with. You know, when it's come to working hours, they would just focus on working, and then you can bond later. You can go to the pub together or do some sort of other stuff. But then in Vietnam, I think that the boundaries or the lines are a bit blur. So people are more friendly. They want to know who you are as well during work time. So I think that's the biggest difference that I've noticed so far.
Yeah. And nap time. In Vietnam, you nap.
Yes.
I mean, not you, but in general, that people nap.
Don't
Nap time.
Oh God, I miss that so much. I think, again, I think because I moved here quite early on, but that was one of the thing that I struggled the most when I first came to the UK is at school to when you go to work. There's such a napping culture, and they don't do it here.
You just kind of doze off in the afternoon. But one thing about the difference, I think, with Vietnamese culture, working culture in the UK, and also in the media industry in particular. So I also work in the media industry. I mean, in a sense that my job is related to that. But one thing that students, I think, need to perhaps pay attention to, and maybe you can share if you relate to that, it even just communications in emails or talking. It's a bit different from what we are taught in Vietnam in IELTS or English. Yeah, you have that experience.
Yeah, for sure. I think even the way even compared to my my friends who I work with in the industry, I would be slightly more corporate. I think also it's because it applies to different industry, right? So if you work in banking or finance, that would be the tone that you kind of incorporate, which is the corporate tone. But then in media, people are more relaxed. I've seen emails where very, very high up very, very high up bosses, they write like 2 sentences. And I think that's something that's worth mentioning, is that sometimes I feel like for this whole process, working, finding a job or whatever, just navigating your life in the UK, a lot of it is unlearning the thing that you learn, whether it's the English that you learned when you were little or like the kind of manners that you learned when you were younger. I think one thing where I said I had to unlearn was to bow to people.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember when I was at school and I saw a teacher, because when I was younger in Vietnam, I have to bow to the teacher, right? But then I had to force myself to not bow to the teacher. So, but then that's a habit that I don't only do to the teachers, but also people who are older than me.
Senior as well.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Sometimes you have to unlearn the stuff that you learn.
I think it's quite hard. In Vietnamese culture, there's a huge thing about respecting hierarchy and seniority. But here, to progress, you actually have to speak up more and just say things and ask questions. But in Vietnam, you kind of, not, I think it may be, I don't know, it's Asian culture, or I just find it that you need to respect people more and just kind of know your place and not just say things out of nowhere, because it can come across as disrespectful, isn't it?
Yeah, and also I think working here or like just living here, a lot of the time what I do is I have to make mental notes. I think, because a lot of the way we were taught it's not really applicable anymore. So very simple things like calling people by their first name, or actually in the UK, people actually call each other by their surname. I don't know if you've witnessed that a lot, but at my workplace, people do that a lot by addressing people by their surname.
Oh.
Well,
Actually,
in a playful way,
yeah.
yeah. But then that eventually become their nicknames, and then people call them by their surname. So yeah, a lot of the time, I think writing these sort of mental notes is a good way to navigate your life in the UK.
I think because I actually haven't seen that in my companies I worked with, but it right to your point, you say that is something you learn, you picked up from the environment that you were in, and you kind of adapt to it, and you see how people communicate with each other, and you learn to say the same way, so that I think more fitting in as well, and they see you as one of them as well. I think through the application process as well. Thank you for joining us. Thanks so much for sharing all the valuable insights, and thanks to our viewers for tuning in as well. See you soon for another episode of Landed. Hi, thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you enjoy it. To support the show, remember to like, subscribe, and leave comments. You can also follow me on Instagram at Ellen Nguyen Official, where I post content more regularly. See ya!